to ask you what it takes to be effective across cultures, what comes to your mind? If you are anything like me, then you have probably started to rattle off some of the classic self-awareness, open-mindedness, curiosity, flexibility, maybe communication skills, all important, but where is creativity in this picture? And why isn't it closer to top of the list when it comes to what it takes to be effective when working across culture? A very warm welcome to this show. This is EI Cafe with Azim Season 4. I'm your host, Azim Sahid, a human capital specialist, a Lego series play facilitator, ICF certified coach, and emotional intelligence practitioner. Here we are again for another interesting episode, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Just to remind you that inspiring people made possible more stronger with our exclusive knowledge partner, Princeton Institute, affiliated University of West of England, which is ranked 21 in England, the highest ranked UK university in Sri Lanka. For more information, please do check into the podcast note. You heard the introduction. It's something related to creativity and the culture. And today's episode, we are going to talk about what is intercultural creativity and its benefit for organization. To discuss this, I have one of my fantastic colleagues all the way from US. Let me introduce her. She's an award-winning educator, speaker, and the 2019 LA Lakers Businesswoman of the Year. She has spent over 15 years working with creative genius. She is a best-selling author and a host of Create and Grow Rich podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Janine Ledford, Chief Executive Officer at Cafe Strategies. Janine,
so wonderful
welcome
to be
to the
here.
cafe.
Thank you. I'm excited to be in the cafe.
So Janine, first and foremost, thank you very much for spending your valuable time. I know it has been a very tough week for you, and you're spending your valuable time in the cafe to talk about something really important topic. I think this is the right moment to talk about, and people need to know about this particular topic. What do you think?
You know, that feeling where the right idea has met the right time in history, I believe now is that time. And this is the idea moving forward, intercultural creativity.
Fantastic. Janine, it is really interesting to understand like how this topic comes into picture. The topic, what is intercultural creativity and its benefit for organization, right? In that context, I would like to just give our listeners a small brief from your end. What does it look like? What exactly is this we are looking at?
Sure. Well, really briefly, first of all, we have to define the words. A lot of people mistake creativity as only artistry. So they're saying, I'm not creative because I can't sing and can't dance. And so Cafe Strategies is proposing a new definition. Creativity, creative thinking, is the process of problem finding and problem solving with relevance, value, and novelty. How do you produce new ideas? And it can happen in any field. And so we're very clear about that. And the intercultural part of the title comes from intercultural competence. And that's another word that a lot of people may not know. Intercultural competence is your ability to interact with different cultures, not necessarily different just ethnicities and nationalities, but a group of people with different held beliefs and values and systems. And so you're able to be observant of complexities. You're able to adapt your behavior when need be, and you're just sensitive to different cultural norms, and you're able to, adapt your behavior in different cultural situations. So those two concepts together, intercultural creativity, someone who is strong in creating new ideas, but doing it with people from different lived backgrounds. What does that look like?
Awesome. I think it's really amazing. I think we always talk about, culture, but bringing that interpart into this particular whole concept, I think it really resonates and reflects as a global context, as an organizational context, as a community context. In that line, how did you get into this particular area, Janet?
Well, like you said in my bio, education and psychology is where I'm coming from, and so I spent time with K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade, and then at the higher education levels as well. I was an adjunct professor, but at the same time, so I saw a 4-year-old all the way to a 64-year-old in the same week. So it got me thinking of what are the skills that are really needed to have a successful life in your profession, but also in your life. And people who show the abilities, some abilities that you did list off earlier, the open-mindedness and the self-awareness, things along those lines, but how that affects the creative thinking and your ability to creatively produce ideas with people, which, now that we're definitely in a global society, even more so since the pandemic, but companies want to be productive. If you are not productive, if you are not ahead of the learning curve, you're a Kodak, you're a Blockbuster Video, if some of your audience are aware of those US-based companies. And so to be a futuristic, be able to use your imagination in that creative part, but how do you do that with your intercultural part? And here's the kicker. They both set on the same cognitive skills. All of my work is based on neuroscience and what's going on in the brain. And so, Azim, to increase your creative thinking is also to increase your intercultural competence. They both work with the same set of skills. So that's what my work is based on.
Awesome. Now, as you put up the whole brain, in the image to me, and you're talking about self-awareness, bringing that creativity element, like how does emotional intelligence kicks in here? What is your thought?
Well, emotional intelligence is key. Back in the 80s, it was all about profit. Employees are just here, cogs in the machine. It's about, making the profit. And we forgot the fact that, oh, wait, we're dealing with humans and humans have emotions. And if you understand how learning works, learning works first through emotions. So you gauge information and data through your emotional cues first, and then your brain logically puts it where it needs to be. And if you understand how the brain works, if the brain is in a toxic environment, or if the brain is in fear, or if the brain doesn't really know what's going to happen in a negative way, not in a wonderful, spontaneous way, but in a negative way, it shuts down any ability to learn and any ability to take risk and any ability to really fully create. And so that's why emotional intelligence is key, because people need to understand how to regulate their emotions, how to first identify it. Dr. Daniel Siegel is a great mind out of UCLA on self-awareness and interpersonal neurobiology, which is a whole other word, right? Okay. And just people who know how to regulate their emotions and also know how to sense the emotions of others and the emotional climate of a room. That affects your creative thinking, but it also affects your intercultural competence as well.
Okay, so let me bring in this particular line. Now, you said about being that self-aware, like being creative to solve the problems, because problem solving, being creative, strategical thinking, analytical, those are the key words the organization are talking about, and those are the high demand skills people are looking at. And they hire people like us, like me and you, to talk about this, bring that creativity element in terms of, you said the brain when it goes through certain negativity, you get blank, you don't get into creativity mode, or you are unable to solve problems. Do you think organizations need to be more aware about how to make people feel better, good, to take those decisions or solve the problems or bring creativity into it?
You have to. It's almost, expecting, a lot of people are expecting their people to do higher advanced math, like, to use that analogy, like trigonometry, and you haven't even set the stage for the people to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. You have to make sure, and the term that we're using, that's a big term, is the psychologically safe environment, correct? And so if your organization isn't allowing people to be psychologically safe, isn't allowing people to speak up, a lot of employees at different levels feel that they cannot speak up. So a lot of organizations are losing access to a lot of creative ideas just because people do not feel that they have the floor to bring their full selves to work or to speak up their ideas. And so organizations, mind you, in this next decade, is going to start paying attention to the psychological safety an element of their platforms, and making sure people have those lines in place to feel valued, and the whole belongingness. And because the research shows, in my book that's coming out very soon, shows the alignment between psychological safety and people's ability to produce creative ideas that are going to push the envelope so your organization doesn't go under.
Awesome. That's really interesting to hear that. I think these are the things I think organization and their leaders need to really focus. And now I'm going to bring a certain element which you are very close to it, right? Now, creativity isn't the sole artistry, right? But I know that you are a huge arts advocate, right? Right. Now, how do the arts support emotional intelligence in the workplace? Now, I heard about art therapy. I know I heard about a lot of people involving music therapy, everything. But how does this art come and connection emotional intelligence? How can we really work in the workplace? How do you think?
That could be a whole episode by itself, right? Because that's a whole book by itself as well. And one day I hope to write that book, because I am a huge advocate, because the research shows, the brain shows, all of the data shows that when the brain has more cues to log in information and data, it's able to bring up information later on to retrieve. We call it, the retrieval process of information. And so that's why you can hear a song and sing the words that you haven't heard a song for 20 years ago, and you learn the ABCs, within a song, and teachers use music to teach songs. So the arts help encode information for deeper retrieval. Another aspect is the arts are just another form of communication. Don't forget that. Someone who is bilingual, trilingual, multilingual has more access to different ways of accessing ideas and manipulating ideas and combining ideas. Creativity is all about combining and recombining ideas, right? And so if I have someone who can communicate an idea through movement, right? The body is an instrument of thought. Einstein knew this. He would become the atoms and become the electrons, and musical ideas. There's people who I have my background in music, and there's just sometimes you can't say it in words. You have to say it through music. And so I have a 3-year-old. I'm adamant to make sure he is skilled in speaking through the arts, in addition to English, Spanish, and Hebrew, because the more language you have, the more you're able to manipulate data. But also the arts increase your awareness, and the arts increase your observational awareness. There's a great book by Adam Grant called Originals: How Nonconformists Move the World. And he says in the Nobel Prize winners in science, about 80% of them had a solid background in one or more of the arts. And that, I believe, is not by accident. Observation is one of my 7 gems. I have the 7 gems of intercultural creativity. And I talk about how we need to increase our observational skills, not just our sensory, but our intuition skills. And that's a part of emotional intelligence. But when you go through the arts, when you paint, when you listen, you're more attuned to pitch, right? And so when you're in that meeting and you feel someone's pitch drops because they're not really into the deal, even though they're saying it, you can detect these things. And so the arts just helps you be more keen in observing complexity, right? Intercultural competence is all about observing complexity. And people who have that background in the arts are just more advanced in being aware. And there's your self-awareness.
Right. So Jenny, what if, just want a clarification on this clarity, right? Let's get to the organizer context, right? In a workplace. Now, one of the biggest issue most of the organized people are not getting each other. They're not understanding each other. Now, might be coming from different cultural background, right? Now, for example, Sri Lankan context, we have different cultural people who speak different language. Now, I can speak all 3 languages, right? I'm trying to learn another language. I can speak all 3 languages, which I have advantage in comparing other people, because I've been in the community and the cultures who have been mixed around. So for me to get along with any people, it's very quick, easy to do. But not the case for others also. They are finding difficult. So in terms of organizing context, how one can really revolve these issues, because there's the conflict comes because cultures don't match, the languages don't match, misunderstanding occurs, how can this particular component of intercultural creativity come? Do you think still the magic of art can come into picture?
There's a lot there, and I have a lot of my work in childhood development, right? Human development, and people who had that exposure to multiple cultures or multiple languages or multiple people with different lived backgrounds, their brains are actually set up and geared to be more sensitive to these fluctuations within groups. And but it's not, the end of the world for adults. The brain is still very plastic, which means it can still change in adulthood. It's more plastic in childhood, as we know. But the fact that the first step, the number one indicator of a highly creative person is openness to new experiences. So even if someone may not have advanced in the intercultural competence orientations, there's a continuum. And that's what I want people to know. It's a continuum, that there is monocultural mindsets of people who are just very secluded and may not have had a lot of exposure to different cultures and different places. And then there's people who are in intercultural mindset. The people kind of like yourself, you were just maybe in your childhood, you were just placed in different situations where exposure was just a norm of different people with different lived backgrounds. And so organizations need to understand that people are coming in at different levels of orientations, right? From monocultural all the way to intercultural. And that we need to give our people a chance to continue to develop their cultural competency. Even people like you who are a little further along the continuum, you can still get better, by exposing yourself to other things that you have not been exposed to, which you're always welcome to come visit us in Arizona. We can show you around and how we do things as well. And so organizations can start putting up programs and putting up different types of processes and encouraging their people to really take time to get outside of their field, right? To get outside of their culture, to make accountability partners with people from different lived experiences, to, you hear a lot of cross-fertilization among departments, things like that. So when I say culture, once again, I don't mean ethnicity and just nationality, but fields, different educational levels. Someone who has a doctorate is experiencing the world different than someone who has a sixth grade education. Their experiences through life is different. So what does that look like? And my business, Cafe Strategies, our logo is the diamond. And we say that everyone is multifaceted. People have different ways or different cultural lenses that are affecting the way that they're seeing the world and going through life. And so for organizations to allow more of these facets to come to be, right? You'll allow more people to share creative ideas that weren't normally allowed on the ideation table.
I love that metaphor of diamond. And it's really resonate, before the diamond who take those shapes, diamond, just a stone, but you can bring a lot of cultural element, a lot of creativity, being more emotional. You can create that facet of people. I think that's a really amazing metaphor and your logo does resonate your work, what you do, right? So Jenny, in that line, I know your work is more supported by the brain science, right? How does our brain use emotional intelligence to connect better with others? Because this can lead many more years now, especially in this context. We are socially disconnected, a lot of challenges among us. We are virtually getting connected. How does your little work on brain science can come into picture?
Sure, there's a lot. I always lead off on it. There's a lot there because there is so much there. And first of all, just acknowledging that emotions do have a place within professional life. That's the first thing, because like I said before, in the 80s, it was like no emotion in the boardroom, right? And we really missed it there because it just allows so much more data to be dealt with and to be used for creativity. Another thing is for people to understand that there's social contagion going on. Social contagion is a term that, when someone walks in the room and you just feel happier and just inspired, all right? Or you have that other person who walks in the room and just like, you just feel like low and like, people can bring different emotional vibes into a space.
And energy.
And so, Yes, and yes. And so leaders need to be very aware of this because you act as a cue. So if you're a boss who just keeps reprimanding people and you're micromanaging and like 80% of what comes out of your mouth is negative and just not encouraging, the second you walk into a room now without even saying a word, that's the energy you're bringing to space. And that affects people's emotional capability to get their work done, to reach out and take risks, right? Creativity is a lot about going to the unknown. And so if that is the emotional contagion that you're bringing to the room before you even walk in, you're shutting down 50% of the creative potential of your team. On the other hand, if you are really emotionally intelligent, and I believe emotional intelligence training must be a must for C-suite and leadership, because it affects the curiosity and all my 7 gems, which is the mindset, orientation, empathy, curiosity, perspective shifting, right? That's a huge thing. And adaptation, authentic adaptation, which allows you to be a bridge. Those are my 7 gems of intercultural creativity. And so people who are highly advanced in emotional intelligence, they've done the self-awareness work. It starts inside first. And then they've practiced the other awareness work, the cultural awareness work, and artistic awareness work. You can do a lot of training with the arts to increase your emotional intelligence, to listen to a score from a composed piece and to close your eyes and think about the emotion that it's bringing in. Now you have other aspects of your brain doing the work that you may not have utilized at all. So emotional intelligence, as you see in your work, will be on the rise for this next decade.
That's a good news to hear, by the way. Right. So, we are talking about intercultural creativity. We talked about the connection with the brain and emotional intelligence. Now, the question what I want to ask is, why is this work imperative for this work today's context? What would be your take?
Well, the World Economic Forum, not Janine and not Azim, but the World Economic Forum says that creative thinking is now the #1 skill needed in the workforce, right? Innovation. And if creativity drives innovation, curiosity drives creativity, and it's all based on the mindset. And so why I think intercultural creativity will be on the forefront of your training platforms is because organizations need to stay creative and they need to start looking at other people, like I said, with the multifacets, and not just assume that their best creative ideas are going to come from their C-suite or from a selective few or just from those who graduated from Harvard or the Ivy League schools. I have numerous stories in my book that's coming out of the best creative ideas that saved organizations came from the janitor, came from the secretary, came from people who don't normally have the seat at the decision table. And so really harnessing the creative potentials of every member and allowing the psychologically safe platform to be there so every member can share and can take risks and to not be marginalized by their mistakes or by convention, by going up against the status quo, that will be a need. So intercultural creativity sits on that. It sits on people allowing to share and build off of the ideas of other people who may not have the same experiences that is. And perspective shifting is huge. So people who don't have the same experiences as you is a plus, a huge plus. Diversity is a plus, but the diversity within a psychologically safe environment is key.
Exactly. I was just going to touch that D&I, diversity and inclusion on this particular, just with that particular line, and you brought it up very nicely. Then I have a small clarification. Will this intercultural creativity will have an impact on an employee, on an individual, on a work-life balance context? Do you think there's an impact or connection between this?
There is, because creativity is threaded between all. Right. I call it dying of a broken heart. If you've, seen someone who just died of a broken heart because for some reason in their life, they weren't able to produce what was inside of them. Maya Angelou says it, there's no worse feeling than not getting your creativeness outside of you to live on. And I say I wasn't sad when Maya Angelou died because she was the epitome of a person who got all of their creativity out of them and gave it to the world. So she's not here physically, but she's still teaching. I can watch her on YouTube. I can pick up her books. I can see her productions. Her creativity is still living on. And so Yes, yes. And so people to have work-life balance is to know that I'm in a position, either entrepreneurial position or within an organization or both, right? An entrepreneur. I'm in a position that values my creative thoughts. And my ideas, not all of my ideas may come to fruition, but at least I'm heard, I'm valued, and I'm able to grow in my creativity. And people who are in positions where they are not able to speak up and their creativity is stunted and not valued, it metastasizes in other physical and emotional ways. And that is, there's research that shows that. And so it is very creativity. You can be creative as a parent, just raising your kids, as a cook, or a chef. Their creativity finds itself in all areas. And so allowing people to bring it into their work as well, which we spend most of our lives at work or sleep, right?
Exactly.
And so imagine living your whole life not being able to produce your creative ideas. And that's what I call dying of a broken heart.
Absolutely amazing, Jane. Thank you for sharing those amazing facts. And you did bring context alive to the context, giving some examples. Then I think we are coming into a conversation. Before I let you go, I need three things from you. Three. Number one, what would be a best advice or practically a leader can implement in his organization to bring intercultural creativity from leader's perspective? Number two, how can an employee can really work on this particular intercultural creativity? And number three, as a parent, what would be one thing you can say to bring that intercultural creativity among the kids? Just a baby steps will be okay, just to start off.
Okay.
Because these are the things I just want my listeners to take away.
Mm-hmm. So we'll start with the first one as a leader, correct?
Yeah.
First of all, Miles Davis, who is a trumpet player in the US, Miles Davis said, it took a while for me to sound like myself. And Charlie Parker said, if you didn't live it, don't expect it to come out of your horn, which means don't expect your team to do things that you aren't willing to do yourself. And so when a leader does the hard work, when a leader does the self-reflection work, when the leader says, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I don't know something, let's find it out together. In the 80s and 70s, the boss had to look like they knew everything.
Exactly.
But now we need leaders to say, hey, I'm selling this ship into the unknown right along with you. Let's find out together. So that's the first thing I would say to leaders. You need to be the model of what it looks like to be interculturally creative and to be curious and to say, I don't know. And that means moving the ego side and moving other elements to the forefront. To the second one, employees, once again, know that your creativity is a part of your organization, but don't forget to create on your own as well. Because a lot of people lost their jobs when the pandemic hit. So everything they worked on went with the organization. But I made sure that I wasn't just working on things for my job, I was working on things for Genies as well. So what are you creating on your own time? That's you, that no one can take away from you. But also, what are you creating if you're with an organization as well? And just know that you can be proud of both, And for the last one, it's funny. This week, my 3-year-old son, just published his first book called I Am Creative. And I'll make sure you have the link for your show notes.
Yes.
But so what we do in here is a lot of parents and teachers and caregivers and guardians sometimes don't know that their kids are doing creative things, and we kind of shut it down without even knowing it. And do you have kids?
Yes. I have one 8-year daughter, and the second one is turning 3 next month.
Okay, so 3. Okay, so then it looks like we have to send you a book then, huh? a signed book by a 3-year-old. And so what Sean is doing in the book is he's just going through the day, showing what creativity looks like in his like he wrote the book. He's doing all the actions. I'm just the one typing out the words, right? But at the end of the book, I, with my teacher self, I show you what's actually happening and what to look out for and how not to squash it. And so the curiosity aspect, the functional agility, what does it look like as a child, but what does functional agility look like as an adult within teams? Like all of these basic creative aspects that we were born with, how do parents, guardians, and caregivers not squash it by accident or on purpose? You know, some people just do it on purpose because that's just mean. But
don't scribble
most
there,
of us
don't
are.
Scribble here, right? That's what
Yes,
they do.
yeah. And on my podcast, I talk about that. So how can we give, because we want them to be safe, you know, we have to set up boundaries, but how can we have them be safe, but still be creative? And so there's ways that we can do that. And so, so you can follow Sean, the Creative Kid on LinkedIn, Facebook, IG, and Twitter. But what he's doing is he's just showing you what creativity looks like. And then you'll see a small paragraph from me saying, oh, by the way, here's what's going on in his brain. Here's parents, here's what to look out for, and here's how to support it.
Fantastic, Janine. I think you gave 3 diamonds for me and for my listeners. Great. Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Janine. That was an amazing 3 takeaways for me and my listeners for sure. It will add value to people, to inspire. You know, you did inspire a lot of people, and you inspired me, like taking about 3-year-old just and you drafting a book, and you have Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook pages. I mean, that's amazing, right? So your youngest might be the youngest social media influencer in the planet. You never know.
Hopefully so, but we're partnering together to help America and the world be more creative. So he does have his mission in mind.
Absolutely, thank you. So that's the time that we have, ladies and gentlemen. My key takeaway is be creative. Don't stop being creative. Come that curiosity juice coming in. Be creative. That might help you, help the organization, help someone else, help the community, help the whole globe. You never know, like how Janine's 3-year-old son is inspiring me. They're going to inspire the world. It's about creativity. So it will come, and intercultural creativity is something really unique. And I hope our listeners are going to get plenty of takeaways in today's conversation, and a very rich conversation. I learned a lot, Janine. Really, frankly, I learned a lot. And of course, our listeners can get connected to Janine Latford, the Chief Executive Officer at Cafe Strategies, through LinkedIn. I believe you're on Insta and Facebook also, Janine.
Yes.
So you can
We're on
get connected
all the platforms.
And she hosts her own podcast as well. You can just subscribe to it. And of course, details will be available on the podcast. Note, please feel free to just tune in to her podcast as well. So with that, Janine Latford, thank you very much for your valuable time. It has been an amazing conversation. I wish you all the very best, you and your son, on all your journey. And it's a pleasure having you in the cafe.
Thank you for having me, and go be creative. Shine bright.
Thank you.